Alrighty, well, we're right at 10 o'clock here, so we're gonna get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Pearl LaCourciere. I'm the Training Education Coordinator here at the North Dakota State Auditor's Office. So we have Jordan Wall here today speaking about the State Bonding Fund. So we get a lot of questions on this, like what is the State Bonding Fund? Who's eligible? What exactly does it cover? How much does it cost? And so in this session, we'll answer those questions and look at the fund's history, what the North Dakota Century Code says about it, and how to apply for that coverage. I do want to mention that there will be a Q&A at the end. Please use the Q&A button located in the top right corner next to the leave button. We will be answering those at the end of the session. So just you can post them at any time and then we'll go through those at the end. And then I just want to mention if you want to follow along with the PowerPoint, I did send that out in the email yesterday to everyone who registered. So you can pull that up if you want to follow along with it. So without further ado, I think we should get started. I'll introduce Jordan and we'll get him started. So Jordan is the Assistant Director of Underwriting at the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund. It's a nonprofit risk pool that administers property and bonding coverage funds. He brings over 16 years of insurance experience, including roles in claims adjusting and underwriting. Jordan holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Dickinson State University and has earned the Senior Claim Law Associate and Associate in Claims designations. Alrighty, so that ends what I have for you guys, and we'll pass it over to Jordan. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the learning series. I appreciate you guys taking the time. We know summer's a busy time. We know that there's a lot on people's plates, and it'd be remiss of myself if I didn't talk about the weather in North Dakota. I was out on a walk this morning. It was 70-ish degrees. It was quite warm in the morning. Beautiful, slight breeze, right? Summertime in North Dakota, you just can't beat it, right? The sun even still out a little bit right now. And hey, we only had like, 2-inch hail last night, right? That's not too bad, right? It could be worse. We're going to make it a glass half full kind of day. So we're not here to talk about hail, though. What we're going to talk about, it's all about the State Bonding Fund. And whether you're someone who is super familiar with the bonding fund, maybe you're one of those faithful ones that fill out that bonding application every 2 years, you get it in on time, you make sure that bond doesn't lapse, and you know all about it already. Or maybe you've never even heard of the bonding fund. You don't know what it is, you don't know what it's for, you don't know what it does. Or maybe you're somewhere in between. You heard about it, kind of know what it is, but I don't know, don't really know much about it. Just know it's a state fund. Well, what we're going to go through today, there's going to be something for no matter which camp you fall in. We're going to start at the very beginning from the bonding fund. We're going to go through all the way up to today. We're going to go through the application process. We'll talk all about that. I am Jordan Wall, as Pearl said. I will walk through the presentation with you, and without further ado, let's dive into it. Now, a presentation is not a complete presentation without a good disclaimer slide. So with that, this morning I was running through it and I thought, what'd be funny is if I try to read this thing as fast as I can, like you hear on those radio commercials, like I'm going to burn through it. So I practiced that. It didn't go well. So I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm not going to read it at all. And I realized that if I ever wanted to be an auctioneer, that's not going to happen because that did not go well. Kudos to those that could read that super fast, how they do that. I do want to mention something else in addition to this. As you know, we just wrapped up the 69th legislative session that was completed in early May. And one of the things, there are some changes. And so for those of you who like to follow along at home with those bills, you like to read them, you like to see what's changing, there is a bill that is related to the bonding fund, and it did pass, it is through, it is signed. It is 1026, House Bill 1026, for those of you who like to track that. And I will try to mention some of the changes that come up, especially in relation to some of the things that I'm talking to. I'm obviously not going to touch on every single one. There were quite a few changes in there, but I will try to point out a few here and there as we go through our presentation today. So yeah, wanted to mention that as well. 1026 if you want to take a look at that. All right, our roadmap today, briefly touched on it, but I want to be a little more specific with it. First off, we're going to dive into who is NDIRF. Jordan, why are you presenting this? What's NDIRF's role in the bonding fund? What do you guys do? We'll touch on that right away. And then after that, we'll get into the meat and potatoes. We'll talk about the bonding fund. We're going to talk about what it is, what it covers, who it covers, And we'll talk about the application and renewal process too. Is it available to everybody out there? Can a business off the corner of the street down here, can they get it? We'll talk about that as well. And then at the end, we'll save some time for question and answer. If you guys have some questions, I'll save them for the end and we'll see if we can answer those. So with that, who is NDIRF, North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund? A little history on us. We were started in 1986. It was a time when insurance, especially liability insurance for political subs, was tough. It was a very tough time. I believe actually the country, we were in recession at that time as well. And it got super expensive. And it got to a point where the political subs, especially here in North Dakota, came together and formed a pool and said, let's put our money together because we can't afford this insurance. It was absolutely crazy. And so NDIRF was born. And we are a nonprofit. We are created by our members for our members. And our mission is to be the source of risk services for North Dakota's political subdivisions. We have 3 lines. We have liability, public assets, and auto. Public assets, also inland marine might be a common term you hear that's similar to it, but we call them public assets. Those are the 3 NDIRF lines that we have. Let's fast forward to 2019. In 2019, we began administering the North Dakota Fire and Tornado Fund. We also began administering the state bonding fund, right? Our topic today. Why did NDIRF have a role? Why did they administer this bonding fund? At the time, it was under the oversight of the North Dakota Insurance Department, and it actually still is. And then getting back to that 1026 bill, that actually did change the oversight of the Fire and Tornado Fund and the bonding fund to the Office of Management and Budget. So that's going to be changing here on 8/1. But they partnered with us to administer the Fire and Tornado Fund and the State Bonding Fund. And it makes sense because our expertise going back to 1986 is insuring public entities. And it just makes logical sense, right? That we come along and partner with them to do this. We also have NDFIT too, where we serve on the board in just a consultancy role. All right, we're going to learn about the bonding fund. We got to start at square one. Let's go back to when this thing first started. It was created in 1915, and just to mention too, we're not going to go into an in-depth history here. I just kind of pulled out a few certain points here or there that I thought was kind of important or interesting that I wanted to point out. But it's been around 1950, and it's been around 100 years. The bonding fund was started way back when, and there was a premium to it. And the other point I wanted to make here is in 1947, and this is still going on today with just a little bit of change, there was a law that changed to no premiums unless the fund is below $1 million. And the third bullet point I think is pretty amazing. No premium has been charged since 1953. So that fund hasn't gone below $1 million since 1953. And actually that $1 million number has changed. It's gone up to 2 million. And even just this last time, they even changed that section just a little bit, the wording in that section as well, from the last legislative session. But a premium has not been charged since 1953, right? We'll knock on wood, we'll make sure that we'll keep that streak going. We don't want that to end. But also, just to point out too, in the biennium since 1993, money has been transferred from the bonding fund to the general fund only 2 times. So the bonding fund, this is a good fund. It's an old fund that started long ago and still going strong today. And the fact that no premium's been charged, pretty amazing, honestly. All right, so very, very brief history of where the bonding fund started, what year it started, and the no premium law, which is an important thing. And then, what is the bonding fund? Like, what actually is it? When I say bonding fund, what am I talking about? What does that mean, right? So it's a state fund providing blanket bond coverage to North Dakota political subdivisions. It's authorized under North Dakota Century Code 26.1-21. And the reason I want to mention that code to you, and that's probably one you want to jot down if you're interested in reading more about the bonding fund, is there's no policy form, right? If you have homeowners insurance or auto insurance, right, you have a policy form, right? You can read through and see what's excluded. The Century Code is what governs this. There is no policy form. So those of you who are familiar with the bonding fund and you have a bond with the bonding fund, you know that when we renew it, you don't get a policy form, right? You get like a deck page, what we call a deck page, but you don't get an actual form. But it is out on the Century Code. It talks about who is covered, and we're going to get into it as well. But that's where you would go if you're wondering, who does it all cover again? You go to this Century Code 26.1-21. It's a fidelity bond. The Century Code says it's a fidelity bond, and if you're wondering what that is, Black Law Dictionary says a fidelity bond is a bond that covers an employee for loss due to embezzlement, larceny, or gross negligence by employees, right? A pretty simple definition. Embezzlement, larceny, or gross negligence by employees. It's also a blanket bond. And if you see on the screen, there's quotations around there. That's not a typo. That actually is intentional, because if you go out to the statute, you will see that the word blanket bond has quotations around it. And when you see that, that's an indication that it's gonna be defined. And the Century Code does actually define a blanket bond, right? And I'm going to go ahead and just read that to you, because the definition is pretty important, and it was also recently changed. So that's another reason they actually made it very, very short. They shortened it up. It had a little more to it, but it just says a blanket bond means a bond that covers collectively all public employees and public officials. That's it. Right? There used to be more to it. This last session, they just took the rest out and made it just simple as possible. Means a bond that covers collectively all public employees and public officials. Also, one other thing it also Century Code talks about for a blanket bond is it automatically includes coverage for new employees or new public officials. So if a new employee starts, you don't have to add them to some list or something like that to get the bond coverage, right? Blanket bond means they are covered automatically. All right, so that's a little bit about the bonding fund and what it is, but what are the key objectives of the bonding fund? Why even have a bonding fund? Why do we need this, right? Can't they go out on the market and get this? Sure, right? But here's some key objectives of the state bonding fund. Financial protection against dishonesty or failure of duty by public officials and public employees, right? Having that layer of financial protection, right? That peace of mind, right? Knowing that when the hailstorm's coming last night, if you're out on the road and there's nothing you can do, but you have comprehensive coverage, right? There's some peace there, knowing like, hey, I got some financial protection. This isn't going to ruin me financially because of this one storm or this one incident. That's one of the key factors. Number two, public trust, right? On the outside looking in as a member of the community, knowing that the city, the county, the school districts are bonded, knowing that they are taking stewardship of those taxpayer dollars seriously and protecting themselves against potential things that could go wrong, right? That builds trust. That's something that the public looks at and goes, yeah, they are being good stewards of this. They are not worrying about they have that layer of financial protection that is giving them some peace of mind, right? And finally, it's designed to simplify the bond procurement for local government entities. When we go through this application process in a few slides here, and I talk about how to get a bond and how to renew a bond, and with there being no premiums, it's really easy. It's a really easy process. Our local governments, our political subdivisions, they have a lot going on, right? There's a lot of other things that they got on their plate. And we don't want to make a bond process that's difficult or needs to be more difficult or have more paperwork than it needs to be, right? So those are some of the key objectives, some important things as to why the bonding fund is there. But what does it cover? What does this bonding fund cover? Well, I gave you the description of fidelity bond, right? Theft, fraud, dishonest acts, right? Embezzlement, larceny, gross negligence, right? But one of the unique things that I think the bonding fund presents is that coverage is tailored to the amount of money or property handled in exposure to defalcation risks. So a couple things here. First off, all the different political subs out there have different needs, right? It's not a one size fit all. this township might need this amount of coverage. This city might need this amount of coverage. This city's smaller than that city, so they need this amount of coverage. So the coverage can be tailored, and we're going to see that when we go through the application process. The other thing I want to mention in this this second bullet point here is our word of the day, which is defalcation. Now, if you're like me, when I first heard that word, I was like, yeah, I don't know what that means. So I did what everybody does, right? And I looked it up, because defalcation is just, it's one of those words, we're not going to use that every single day. But I want to point it out because the important piece here is that it's used in the Century Code, and you're going to see it in that Century Code when you go to read about the bonding fund. But defalcation is this: it's the misappropriation or embezzlement of money or funds by someone entrusted with its management, right? So you really could replace that with embezzlement of money if you wanted to be as simple as possible, right? The amount of money or property handled in exposure to embezzlement risks, or, you know, embezzlement of money trusted by somebody at the risk of them stealing it. That might be, and you're going to see this word come up again. In fact, when we get to the application, I'll point it out again. It's going to be the word of the day, okay? And finally, entities must choose coverage based on financial exposure and statutory requirements. That's that tailored piece, right, that we kind of talked about in that second bullet point. The entity can go through. There are some entities out there that are required by law to have X amount of bond coverage. And when we talk about the application in a few slides, you're going to see where you can do that and how you can do that. So it is, you can tailor it to fit your need. All right, let's talk about who's covered by the bond, right? Everybody's covered by a bond, right? Everybody can get this, anybody and everybody. Well, let's see what the statute says. This, I want to point out this is one of the ones that was changed in the last legislative session as well. They changed a little bit of the verbiage here, but generally this is mostly correct. I think they changed it and made it more, let's talk about this. Public employees and public officials. We heard that earlier is what the bond covers. Public employee, what does that mean? Public employee means an individual employed by a state agency or any political subdivision, an officer or employee eligible under section 571556. That is another section of Century Code they're referencing there, and just for quick reference, that has to do with senior citizen programs. An employee under section 61-16.105, again, referencing another section of code that has to do with, just again for quick reference, water resource districts, and an officer and employee of an international peace guard. Okay, pretty simple, right? We can understand who's covered here. It goes on to say, though, public employee does not include an individual employed by an occupational and professional board or commission under Title 43. Title 43, we're referencing another section of code. That's the occupation and professional section. There are a ton of occupations listed under there. It would have took many other slides to throw them on there. So something you might want to reference if you're wondering, is my occupation excluded under here? Some of the ones I recall being on there, like optometrists, dentists, that sort of thing, right? Or anyone by the State Bar Association. So that second half there is saying not everybody is covered. There is some exclusion here, but generally speaking, for political subs and state agency, the public employee definition there should pretty much cover most, right? Public official, very similar to public employee, means an elected or appointed officer or deputy of a state agency or a political subdivision. And there's an exception again, except for an officer of an occupational professional board under Title 43 or State Bar. So this is pulled straight out of Century Code. I want that to be clear. I'm getting these definitions of public official and public employee straight out of that Century Code. I'm probably going to sound like a broken record about how many times I reference the Century Code, but that's where this comes from. That's the guiding light over the bonding fund. So let's talk about how I can get a bond. Let's say I work for a housing authority, and I don't think I have a bond right now. I don't have one through the state bond, but I want to get one through the state bonding fund. What do I got to do? What do we do? I just call you up and we get one? No, there is a qualification process. There's a process that we have to go through, and part of that is, are you a political subdivision? And once again, Sound like a broken record? Pull this right out of Century Code. Political subdivision. There's those quotations again, right? We've seen those a few times now. Means a county, township, park district, school district, city, and any other unit of local government, which is created either by statute or by the Constitution of North Dakota for local government or public purposes. All right. Well, I'm a I have a housing authority. I work for the housing authority. I don't see housing authority on here. I see township. I see park district. I see county. I don't know if I can get a bond. Well, let's look at this piece here. Any other unit of local government which is created by statute or by the Constitution of North Dakota. A housing authority is one of those, right? It's created by statute. It's one of those that's created by, I think I have it here, it's statute 23-11 or 02, right? Must be created by the resolution of a county or city as set forth in that statute. Boom. That's where when we get a request to join the bonding fund, we're going to ask for bylaws. We're going to ask for articles of incorporation if you have them. We're going to ask for some of those things because there is this second piece here where it talks about any other unit of local government created by statute or the Constitution of North Dakota. So when we get a request, we're going to look at that. We're going to need those pieces of information to determine. And again, per Century Code, we're following what they're doing. Some other ones, regional planning councils, irrigation districts, ambulance service districts are some units that are created by Century Code. All right, so I qualify. I can get a bond. Excellent. What do I do now? We got to fill out an application, right? The application is 2 pages, so we're gonna have 2 slides here. But on the first page is off to the right on the slide here. We got to fill one of these out. Where do we find these? If you go to our website, www.ndirf.com, there's going to be a coverage tab. If you drop that down, you'll see bonding fund. Click on that. It's right on your left side. It'll say bonding fund application. It's a fillable form. You can print it out if you want to print it out, fill it in by hand and mail it to us. That's perfectly fine. If you want to just fill it in and email it to us, perfectly fine. On the second page, you'll see that we have the mailing address and we have the email address as well, so that you can easily get that sent off to us. A couple things, it must be signed. The signature piece is on the second page, which we'll see that in just a little bit. It must be fully completed too. On this page, you can see section 1, section 2, section 3. Those have to be filled out. If you skip section 3 or you skip section 2 and you send it in to us, I got to send it back. If you skip section 4 and 5, those are on the next page, I'm going to have to send it back. We got to have it filled out completely. One other thing too, we have to fill this out every 2 years. The entity has to fill it out every 2 years. That is a requirement in Century Code. Can you fill it out more than every 2 years? Say you fill a section out and then 6 months later you have a change in your revenue or something. Yes, you can. You can fill out a new application to better reflect that change, so you can adjust that bonding coverage to the appropriate amount that you need. So yes, you can fill it out more than once if needed. Just to walk through the app a little bit here, something else I want to mention about the application with the recent legislative changes. I know we just changed this app a couple of years ago to this. There could be more potential changes coming down the road, but just a heads up on that. But if you go out there right now, this is as it is. This is the application. That's what we'll talk about. The general information, section 1 there, pretty simple. If you are a new member, you see the section that says bond number. We will get you a bond number. If you don't know your bond number, you can call us, you can email us, we can get you your bond number, no problem. Also very important, I want to point this out, please fill out the mailing address and the email and all that contact information as accurately as possible. Also, let us know if there's a change there. Maybe that person is your contact person left or retired and they're no longer there. Please let us know that, because what happens is when you come up on your two-year renewal time, 30 to 60 days before that, we're going to send out a reminder. We're going to send out a notice so that you're aware that your bond is going to lapse in 30 to 60 days. If we don't have the updated contact information, that might get sent out to an old email, or it may get mailed to somebody who's not a part of the township anymore. So it's important to keep that information updated. You can always email us and call us and say, hey, so-and-so's not here anymore. Please update our information to say the contact is now this. Here's their email, or here's their new mailing address. So again, it's very important that we get that information and keep it updated. The second part, asking about financial audits, who does them? Do you send them to the county auditor? Section 3, this is the asset control section. This is where you're going to fill in. This is going to be asking about your cash accounts, CDs, money markets, investment accounts, right? This is something that when we talk about tailoring, right? This is where everyone is going to be a little bit different, right? So you can fill that out, and then you're going to get onto the next page. It's going to be expense and payable section. Please fill that out in its entirety as well. And then section 5. I titled this one Bond Application Section 5 because if you're familiar with Section 5, it can be a little confusing, right? And so I thought it might be best if we just walk through this. If we walk through this line by line, Section 5. This is probably where we get the most questions on applications. What does this mean? What does that mean? What do I put here? I can't tell you what numbers to fill in there, but I can walk you through what they're asking for. Let's go 5A. Let's go right off the bat. Total in Section 3. Pretty easy, right? Or requested amount of bond coverage based on the amount of money and property handled. Section 3 is asking about your amount of money that you have, right? Those cash, CD, money markets, right? You can move that right on down. It's at the very, very bottom there, total of 2 lines above. Bring that number down to 5A. Letter B. This can be a confusing one because our word of the day is in here. Requested amount of bond coverage based on the opportunity for defalcation and consideration of any other laws requiring bonds and related conditions. What does that mean? First off, defalcation, we talked about that, right? They're talking about embezzlement, right? Larceny, right? Or theft, right? Any sort of, we could even substitute that word. We talked about substituting requested amount of bond coverage based on the opportunity for embezzlement or theft and consideration of any other laws requiring bonds and the related conditions. What that second part is saying is you might be statutorily required to have a certain amount of bond. And if you're looking at your number in letter A and it's not meeting the statutory amount that you're required to have, this is where you can fill that in. Put that number in letter B here, right? That's kind of, could letter B be the number 0? Sure, it could be. It might be 75,000. Maybe you need to get to 75,000 of a bond. And we looked through our calculations on here. You can see what you might need to put in there to meet that statutory requirement. But that's what letter B is asking. So yes, we get asked, can we put 0 in there? You could, yes, if that's what you need to put in there, and if you've met your statutory requirement or you don't have one, yes, you can do that. If you need to use a number to get to that amount of the statutory requirement, yes, that's where you put it. So that could be different for many different entities, right? Letter C, probably the easiest one of these two, right? Adding A and B together. We're going to total that number up. Letter D, this can get a little confusing, but depending on your number, right? So letter D, if you're under 40,000, you're not even going to do letter D. You're just going to skip down to this coverage amount box. And this coverage amount box takes you right through everything, right? The coverage requested is less than 10,000. The coverage amount is the requested limit. Second one, if the coverage requested is 10,000 to 40,000, the coverage amount is 10,000. 39,000, you're going to get $10,000. 12,000, you're going to get $10,000. If the coverage amount requested is greater than 40,000, the coverage amount is 25%. So if it's greater than 40,000, we're going to complete letter D. We are going to complete it. And in fact, letter D and the coverage amount box can actually match. It can be the exact same number, and they should be. One thing to point out here too, in that third bullet point, it talks about the amount of coverage if it's, the cap is 2 million. So if your total in C ends up being, 10 million, 20 million, you're going to get 2 million. You're not going to take 25% of 20 million. You're going to get 2 million. That's the cap. You're going to put that in that coverage amount line. Here's the signature spot right at the bottom here. Please do not forget to sign it. That can easily be missed, especially after you're filling out all this other stuff. Please sign it. It does have to be actually signed. I cannot accept it. I have to send it back to you. And if you don't want any delays in the processing of this, please sign it and date it as well. Here's where I mentioned at the bottom of this form, you can see that we have our mailing address of where you can send that to. We also have our phone number if you have questions. There's the bonding fund email. It's a little cut off, but it's bondingfund@ndirf.com. You can send an email there with questions or with your completed application. When you complete the application, what will happen is if it's completed in its entirety and I can process it, we can have it processed, we will send you what we call a deck page. And essentially what's on there is you got your bond number, the contact name and information is on there, your effective dates are on there, and your amount of bond coverage is on there. Your effective dates, as I previously mentioned, it's good for 2 years. That's why you don't have to fill this out every year. It's good for 2 years. So if you fill this out you filled it out for effective 7/1/2025, you're good until 7/1/2027. 30 to 60 days before that, we're going to send out a notice to let you know that, hey, it's time to renew. You don't want it to lapse, etc. So that's the application. Like I said, with the recent changes, we may have, from the legislative standpoint, we may have some changes to this form. Again, for those of you familiar with the bonding fund and have been a part of it, I know we just changed it, Sonia, a couple of years ago, but it could happen again, so fair warning. The claims process. All right, we got our bond. Say we've even renewed it. We've been bonded for a few years now. Maybe we've been bonded for 10 years. And lo and behold, we find out somebody's been stealing money from us. What do we do? All right, we got to file a claim. How do we do that? Where do we do that? Where do we even start? We're going to go back to the North Dakota Insurance Reserve website, www.ndirf.com. We're going to go back to that coverage tab. We're going to go to bond. On the right, left side has the application, right side has the claim form. That needs to be filled out. Again, one of those forms, please fill it out in its entirety. I believe that form does have to be notarized as well. Fill it out. It says on there where to send it to you. It can send it to bondingfund@ndirf.com. That would come into us. We get it. What do we do? Couple things, right? We're checking to make sure the second bullet point, which is very, very important, and I want to make everybody aware of it. The claim must be turned in within 60 days of the date of discovery. So the date that you discovered the funds were being stolen, that money was being stolen, you got 60 days to get a claim in with the bonding fund. This is not a Jordan rule. This is the statute. This is in the statute. That has not been changed. 60 days from the date of discovery. Very, very important. Don't wait while the criminal or civil side is playing out through the courts and say, well, we're going to wait to see it, because those can take longer, right? Especially if they're complex. Don't wait. Get something filed with us right away. We will get it. We will confirm that it is an actual claim. We also look at, those definitions that we talked about in public employees, public officials. Do they meet those? They're not one of those accepted, right? We just kind of double check all that, right? We look at it all. If the claim's accepted, we send letters out to the entity that turned in the claim. We send a letter out to the state's attorney's office, because they're usually got something pending on their side. We send a letter out to the state auditor's office. And what happens is, from this point, the state auditor will reach out and they will do a special examination of the books. They will issue a report on those findings. And the timeline for this, the examination, it can take a little while. It depends how many years was this over? How complex is it? Some of these instances where money's been stolen, it has sometimes multiple people involved. So they will issue a report when their findings are complete. And then what happens after that is we're gonna get a copy of that report, and we're gonna look to the criminal judgment or the civil judgment side. We're gonna monitor what's going on there. Because if we're gonna issue a payment, there's gotta be a judgment has to get entered. It has to be entered against the employee that was stealing the money, right? And once that happens, we can get a payment out to the entity. It'll either be the amount of the bond or the limit of the bond or anything less than that, right? Because limit of your bond, that's the most coverage that you get. After that, payment's been issued. We're going to work with the state's attorney's office to try to get restitution. We're going to try to get that money back. So we'll work with them on that process. Again, that can be a longer process as well, but that's something that we do on our end to try to get that money back. All right, claims process is done. A few key items to know about the bonding fund. If I put you to sleep, I apologize, but if you wake up, this is the part that you want to note down right here. These are some key items that we talked about that are the key takeaways that you want to remember. Currently, no charge or premium, but there could be, but there's not, right? There could be. The statute allows that there could be a charge, but as of today, we're knocking wood. We got a long streak going of no charge, no premium, and we don't. We're going to keep that thing going. So, secondly, just talked about it. Claims must be submitted within 60 days of the date of discovery. Very, very, very important. I would hate to have a claim fall outside of that where you don't turn it in within the 60 days of the date of discovery, and we can't process it just because of that. Again, that's century code, that's law, you can't do it. So it's something to keep in mind. If there's no policy form, I know I mentioned that a few times, it's that century code, right? That's the century code you want to turn to if you have a question of, I wonder if this is covered or that is covered. You can ask us around questions as well. But if you're curious and you want to read more about the bonding fund, read the century code. I would go through and read that. Keeping your contact info up to date, also very important. Again, as mentioned, we don't want our renewal notices going out to somebody who's not there anymore and getting it missed and having a lapse in coverage. We want to make sure we're getting those to the right individuals. Please let us know if anything changes with your contact for the bond fund. We can update that on our end, no problem. So that even next renewal time comes around, that person's already listed as a contact on there, and it's no problem. It goes to them. Hopefully won't have any lapse in coverage because it went to the right person, got everything renewed on time. And again, I talked about it throughout our presentation here today. Legislative changes, right? These are fresh, these are new, they just happened, just signed off on this last session. So we are reviewing all the different changes that have taken place. The administration of this is moving from the oversight of it from North Dakota Insurance Department to OMB as well. Just something to note that's in that House Bill 1026. Again, that's a good one to go and read it, especially if you read and we're familiar with the statute as it was, but you also want to see what changed. I'd encourage you to go out and check that out and read about those changes. Some of the common questions we get, these are questions that we see quite frequently. Do we currently have a bond? We can find that out for you. Please give us a call, send us an email, bondingfund@ndirf.com. My last slide, I'll have my information on there. If you want to send me an email, give me a call. Yes, we can find out if you have a bond. If you don't, we can find out when it lapsed. If it did lapse, we can give you effective dates if you're curious, if renewal time is coming up and it's still maybe 90 days out, but you want to get it going on it, that's perfectly fine too. How often do we have to do this? How often do we have to renew this bond? That's a very common question. Again, every 2 years per statute. So can do it more frequently if you need to, but every 2 years, at least every 2 years. Can I have help on Section 5? Yes, that is Section 5 can be a little confusing, especially if you don't fill it out. And look, filling this out every 2 years, that's not very frequent, right? I mean, I can see where you can not remember what they're talking about there. No problem. Give us a call. Let us help you fill that out. I can't tell you numbers to put in there, but I can answer your questions related to what does that mean? What are they asking for? We can walk through that, absolutely. I'd rather have you call on the front end and we get it right, and so it's filled out completely in its entirety and have it right so we can get it processed sooner for you instead of coming in, it's not correct, we have to send it back, and just the time that it takes with that. Let's get it done right on the front end. Yes, please call. if you have a question on section 5, or email. We get plenty of emails too, that's perfectly fine. Where can I find an application? I mentioned it is on our website, www.ndirf.com. Go to coverage, and on the bonding tab, you will see the application off to your left. Off to the right, I believe, is the claim form. And who do I talk to if I have questions? Well, you can talk to me or any of our team here at the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund to answer your bond questions. Maybe you have some other questions that come up on a different section, or just some general questions. My information is right there. My phone number, direct line to me, my email. There's also bondingfund@ndirf.com. And just remember, our word of the day is defalcation. That is a good word. That is a good word to keep in mind. You could probably stump somebody on that if you ask them what that means. Or maybe not, I don't know. Maybe I'm in the minority and didn't know 100% what that was until I started administering the bonding fund. But with that, I don't have anything else. If there are any questions out there, Pearl, I am more than willing to try and answer them. I'm not seeing any questions coming through. But if there are, Pearl, did you see any questions? I'm not seeing any unless you have some there.
We don't have any questions, it doesn't look like. If anyone has any right now, though, they can for sure type them in and we will answer them. Or feel free to reach out to Jordan at any time if you have particular questions that you want maybe a more in-depth answer on. Do feel free to reach out to him, or if you have any questions about how it relates to your review process or anything like that, reach out to our office as well. We could also put you in touch with Jordan. Alrighty, so it doesn't look like we had any questions come in. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. If you haven't already signed up for next month's learning series, I encourage you to do so. It'll be me speaking again. So I'm sorry you have to see my face for another hour, but I'll be speaking about auditor organization and tips and tricks on that. And then this session is recorded and the link will be sent out next week along with a short survey. Please take that survey. It helps us develop tailored trainings for you guys. So if there are any topics in particular that you want to hear, just feel free to put that in the survey, and then go ahead and sign up for updates from the Office of Good Government. We try to keep you updated with everything that's changing, and there's a lot that has changed recently. So, there's a lot that's been going on. Oh, it looks like, okay. It looks like someone asked if the recording will be provided. Yes, the recording will be provided. Then someone else has a question. Oh, we got another question here. So, Jordan, this question says, does the bond cover any lawsuits brought against staff or council members?
My question to that would be it depends what kind of lawsuit is being brought against the staff or the council member. Is it a lawsuit against a staff member who had been embezzling funds? Because the bonding fund does not have like a defense coverage or something for that.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't give any more detail on that. Okay, here's another one. So it looks like, if you want, the person who asked that question, if you want to reach out to Jordan directly with that question, that would be great. You can just shoot him an email. I think that works for you, Jordan. Yes. So here's another question that came in. Someone asked, how can we increase a bond? For example, my council would like the bond to reflect a higher amount to what we actually handle.
To increase your bond, I would fill out a new application. And I would ask too, just the why behind the increase. Is it an increase of funds coming up? Or because if there is, you can always do an application and fill it out to reflect that. If you know some money's coming down the road, but you don't have it now, so you can't account for it, it's not in your cash account yet. You can always update that. But if you have further questions, you want to talk more specifically on that, if we want to dive into specifics related to that, give me a call because we can talk about that.
Perfect. Yeah, everyone who's still, like, if you do have questions, it's great to always reach out directly. You know, I know we work for the state, but we're not that scary. So we're here to answer any questions you guys have. Alrighty. I don't see any more questions coming through. So that looks like it takes care of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty, so we're right at 10:45, 10:46. We'll end early today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, if you have any questions, give Jordan a call, give us a call here at the State Auditor's Office. We're always here and available to answer any questions you might have. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you at the next one.